Good evening, everyone. How are you all doing? I hope all of you are doing fine and a very warm welcome, rather, a very cold welcome to all of you who are in India. And I'm sure the weather is quite hot these days. I'm welcoming you from Melbourne, Australia, and myself, Dr. Renu Vishra, and I, on behalf of Research Graduate, the entire team, we welcome you all to the new webinar we have scheduled on the topic data collection, analysis, and interpretation. So, I'm sure that all of you must be looking forward to it. Now, let us talk about research graduate, the uh, the face behind this webinar. So, when it comes to any of the research query you have, and any of the uh, doubts related to your statistical analysis, related to your thesis writing, your proofreading, any um, review paper writing concerns, any of it related to that, you may please get in touch with the research graduate. So it's a one-stop solution for all your research queries. So as to get in touch with research graduate, the details are flashing on your screen. The number you are there, the number on which you can get connect through WhatsApp or calling is there in front of you, and you can browse research graduate um, through researchgraduate.com. And also you can email research graduate with the given email ID. Okay, so let us talk about this webinar structure a little bit. See, this is about 90 minutes or so. So when it comes to 90 minutes or so, we generally don't stick to the timeline every time I say the same thing. We may go beyond 90 minutes as well. However, when it comes to question and answer, again, the same thing applies, that we won't be sticking to the clock, and all your queries will be answered. When it comes to PPTs, recordings and certificate will be sent to you on the registered email ID. Okay. There is a special request for all of you, especially who are watching this webinar through phones. You might can have a glitch related to the video quality, because generally the phone screens didn't support the video screening well in advance. However, suggesting you all to increase the video quality on YouTube to 720p, so that all of you can have a good and a better experience. All right. So let's get started. Before that, I would like to wish everybody who is celebrating Eid this time. So I wish all of you, all the ones who are celebrating Eid, a very happy Eid to you and your family. Okay. So let's get started with today's discussion. Now, first and foremost thing is, when it comes to discussion about data analysis, interpretation, and also pardon, before I move ahead, if you have any question in between, right, if you have any doubts, any question in between, kindly make a note of that question, and we will take the questions at the end of the webinar. I would not be taking any question in the middle of the webinar, because that deviates from the rhythm which is going on, and others also get to need to wait. So all of your queries will be taken once we are approached towards the end of it. Okay, getting back to it, what we were talking about that when it comes to questionnaire, before that, it's very important to understand data collection, data interpretation, data analysis and all. Any research, I'm not categorizing it into qualitative or quantitative. I'm saying any research, when you have to perform any research, you have to conduct any research, it has to have a data. Okay, irrespective of the kind of data I'm talking about, I'm just saying it has to have a data. It can be numerical if they are researchers, quantitative in nature. It can be theoretical or non numerical if it's qualitative research in nature. Okay. And it can be a combination both in case of mixed. Now, one thing in all of these type of research or any kind of research is common is data. Okay. So, question comes, how do we collect it? I mean, from where this data comes from. Okay. And before that, understand what exactly is data. Many of the students or many of the researchers, they have a very confusing state of mind related to data, which is quite obvious and which is quite okay also. What exactly is data? Sometimes it's only that we conduct the survey, or we fill let the respondents fill the questionnaire. Is that only what we understand as data? So my answer to you would be no. Okay. Data in research is understood as any kind of information which you need to pursue your research. Okay. Which you need to pursue your research. Any kind of information. So again, that information can be numerical. That information can be the data based on theories and model, like we said, literatures, or the data which is collected through interviews, or the detailed questionnaires, unstructured one or structured, whatever. We'll understand it in the coming slides. So I hope all of you have understood what exactly the data is called as. Now let's come to questionnaire. For this time being, you must have got a clear understanding about that. What exactly do we know about questionnaire, or what are questionnaires? Okay, questionnaire basically are the way to collect that data, which I was just explaining it to you. Okay, so we choose the respondents, or we can call sample. Okay, obviously, if let's say, for example, I want to conduct a research on student satisfaction. Okay, student satisfaction from higher education in a particular city. So all the students would be too many in number. So, okay, they all are my population. So every student who is enrolled in a higher education course in a particular city will be a part of my population, and I can't conduct information or data from all of them. Okay, so I will choose the representation from that population, which is called as sample. Okay, and that, how to calculate that also has a set of formulas. Okay, just I would like to tell you, for qualitative, this sample is relatively small as compared to quantitative, which has a large sample size generally. Okay, now coming back to questionnaires. Now this questionnaire is basically, it is a list of those questions from which you collect the information data from those sample respondents. Okay, so irrespective of you are conducting qualitative or quantitative, you can use the questionnaires as per design for any kind of research, qualitative or quantitative. Okay, now when you talk about this questionnaire, it is generally of two types: close ended and open ended. So, whenever you have a look on questionnaire next time from after this webinar, you will get a understanding that whether I'm viewing a close ended questionnaire or an open ended questionnaire. Close ended questionnaire, just understand by the name of it that close ended means which does not have any option given to the respondents or the sample to explain their answers. So you have a fit or pre-decided options out of which the respondents need to choose from. Okay, that is it. Open-ended questions are exactly opposite to what I talked about. That is, the respondents can actually express their answers. So, like, you like summers. Why? What is the reason for you, or any question, whereas you are giving an opportunity to the respondent to explain their answers. That is open ended. I hope by this time it is clear to all of you. Okay, so it's very simple. That questionnaire, it is a set of questions you design or you adapt from the previous researchers which is aimed to gather a specific information from your chosen respondents. All right, okay. Now comes that how this questionnaire comes from. I mean, how to design this questionnaire. Like simply I told you that there are situations where you can design the questionnaire and where you can adopt the questionnaire as well. When you adopt the questionnaire based on the similarity of your research with what already have been carried out in the past. So if you find any research based on the same platform like done by you, you may and that particular author or researcher has used the questionnaire in the research, you may use the same one, giving the due credits to the author. Okay. On the other hand, you may design your own questionnaire as well, which has a series of steps. Okay. All right. So before I take you to the designing of the questionnaire or steps to design the questionnaire, let's understand how a questionnaire should look like. See, a questionnaire, and this is on the basis of my own like teaching experience, and particularly for research, which I am, engaged with this higher education or doctoral student from past 7 8 years. Students generally forget or generally overlook their goals, research goals, aims, and objective in the research questions of the thesis or the project on which they're working on. Okay. So, what I keep on reminding them is that you have to design those set of questions which reflects your variables, which I'll be telling you what are variables, which reflects your objectives in research questions. So, you basically, what are you aiming at as the answer of your research question? You should get that information from your questionnaire. So if I want to ask, for example, if I have a thesis wherein I want to understand the consumer preferences over ice cream flavors, I want to understand that the flavor how the preferences of the consumer towards the specific flavors of the ice cream changes in different seasons. That's what I'm aiming to find out. So my question would be like, which do I like ice cream? Firstly, because not necessarily everybody like ice cream. And first and foremost thing is, we do not assume that no, everybody likes ice cream. No, that we don't do that. So we'll ask them, do they like ice cream? If yes, which flavor, in which season, all these questions. So my questions in the questionnaire is designed in such a way that they are giving the answers to the objectives and the research questions that fit for my thesis. Okay, so it's very important that we keep in consideration that what are my research questions and what are my research objectives. Okay, all these key concepts should be defined, because when we are asking anything, you are conducting your research from a longer period of time. Okay, but from the people whom you are asking or whom you are approaching for your questions to be answered with, they are not that equipped with the information which you have. Okay, so like I told you, do not assume. Okay, plus do not use very complicated language for your questionnaire. It has to be very simple, and your key aspects which you would like them to answer should be defined properly. Okay, it should be like whether you want to send them by email or face to face, whatever, it should be very clearly decided. Your number of people should be decided. That's what called sampling, that to how many people you want to send this questionnaire to. Okay, then comes, you will get the answers and you'll get the data, you'll analyze it and everything. Okay, plus specifically for the quantitative researchers, I'm telling you, do not aim to design any long questionnaire. I have often seen students designing 35, 40 questions questionnaire. No, please don't do that. Why? You don't want your sample respondents, firstly, to lose their interest while answering the questionnaire. Secondly, you don't want them to leave midway, because if somebody will give me to fill a 30-40 question questionnaire, I will definitely get bug out of it, right? I would not probably reach halfway through and I'll lose my interest. So try and attempt to have an appropriate number of questions in the question. And now please don't ask me that what should be the appropriate number of questions, because depends upon research to research. Like, if I say that 20 or 15 questions are enough to go ahead with, but if somebody needs to, you know uh, can get their answers fitted in 12 to 15, that's okay. So your number of questions should be decided as per your research structure, your research aim and objectives. However, just a thing to be remember is, do not make it too lengthy. Okay, that's it. All right. Also, one thing which I would like to tell you as a part of this questionnaire feature discussion, that whomsoever you are sending your questionnaire, okay, if you want their demographic details like their age, their gender, their names, their association, if you want this information from them, you have to take a consent from them. Okay, if you design a questionnaire having questions with such information to be taken, and you publish that information without their consent, that's unethical. So always make sure that you take a pre consent from them, that I would be, or I will be, or I might can I might use your information. So at the end of it, always there is always a consent signature from them, or there is a consent state to be taken from them, there they are okay sharing their information. Okay, if not their demographic details, probably their any of the question you have designed requires them to answer related to their work profile, or to be mentioning their organization name. Okay, so they should be very well known and aware about the fact that whether this information will be published, if published, whether this name will be published or not. So their consent should be taken, and this consent should be clearly explicitly explained in your questionnaire. There should be no hidden information. Okay, like what we get into on the insurance policy, in very short at the end, that insurance policy on the basis of the market risk and all. So but you are not doing that. You need to explain this information to them, or you need to take this their consent from them in a very clear manner, and they should be aware of that information can be used. Okay. Okay, now I think by for now you all must be very clear about the fact that why we use this questionnaire. We need to get the information, and you get a lot of information in a very easy way. Um However, um, how you analyze the information of the responses, that's something needs to be decided, because the kind of information you will be getting, you are unaware of that, so that somehow gets complicated. However, it's a very easy convenient way of collecting you know information. All right, now there might be some student of amongst your our audience that who has their clinical background, or who has their healthcare background. So basically, when it comes to questionnaire quality aims in clinical research, or I would say that not only clinical research, in any kind of research, these quality aims are there on the questionnaire platform. Okay, when you are designing or when you are distributing any questionnaire, so firstly it should be valid. Okay, now what it means by valid, before I go and explain you what is valid, or what is validity, what is reliability, I told you that you can actually adopt the questionnaire from the previous research and you can design it. Okay. So all those who are taking the research from the previous researches. Okay, anybody of you who is taking the research from the previous researches, they need not to go with the process of proving the validity. Okay, if you find any questionnaire and if your supervisor is okay for you to use any previously used or previously designed questionnaire by any other researcher to your research, you need not to go for the validity and the reliability of the same reason being they have done it already. However, you need to be sure that whatever questionnaire you're choosing from any previous research should be reflecting the similar kind of objectives and the variables which you have, or probably should be on the same grounds as your researchers. Okay, now coming to the researchers, coming to the questionnaire which you design, they should be valid. Okay, now validity means, or valid means, they should be able to measure, or they should be able to find out what they are intended to be. Like for example, if I want to find out the attitude towards the ice cream of the consumer, so my question should be designed in such a way that the information received after answering those questions will direct me towards the attitude of the consumer towards the ice cream. Okay, reliable. If I have designed a questionnaire and somebody after me is using that questionnaire for the similar purpose, they should be able to use it, because they should my questionnaire should be used in a reproducible manner. That means people after me also can use it, or in a similar manner can be used it. Like I said that you can use any previously designed questionnaire by somebody else. Third is unbiased. Unbiased as in, it should basically does not be reflected any kind of biasness from the researcher's end, or it should not be able to measure any value, undervalue or overvalue. Okay, so you are basically designing the question free from any kind of biasness, and obviously there is a chances of error every time. However, your aim should be designing to unbiased. Your own biasness should not reflect in any kind of questions. Discriminating. Now discriminating means that they should be adequately identify the differences between the respondents from you are sharing this questionnaire with. Okay, now this your question should not look like, or should not give an impression to the respondents that you are your the meaning of the questions can be taken in a different way by different respondents. Okay, so any kind of discrimination should not be reflected from your question. Now all this may sounds little probably out of use to many, that what is the point of discussing this, but I have seen this happening, that this discrimination and biasness have, in my experience, have been raised by a couple of respondents for from two of the researchers which I have seen in the past, that respondents refused to answer. A couple of respondents refused to answer the particular questionnaire based on commenting about discrimination and biasness. So this should be particularly avoided. Now, when it comes to questionnaire and clinical research, so basically, clinical research, the question should be each question should be valid and reliable, like I said, for any kind of researchers as well. And your the flow of questionnaire should be logical. Now again, I would say that this is particularly important for every kind of research. Why? Because when you are designing a questionnaire, you will make sure that the flow of the questionnaire, or what do you mean by flow of questionnaire, is the questionnaire should be designed and should be arranged in such a way. For instance, if you are meeting anybody, so first you do is hi. Next question is how are you? I am so and so. So if I say that hi, the next question exactly is that what did you cook in the day today? There's no flow of questions. So hi, how are you? I am so and so. This shows a logical series of questionnaire when you are introducing yourself to someone. Okay, this also is applicable to the questionnaire as well, that your questions should be arranged in such a way that it's automatically, the answer of one is automatically leading to the another one, or there has to be some connection between the previous question and the preceding question. Okay, and the questions should be very clearly communicated, very, like I said, your aim is not to confuse the respondent. Your aim is to make the question very clearly understood by the respondent so that they can clearly answer it. So there is no use of there is no use of mentioning jargon English, or probably difficult English. There is no point using that. There is no need doing that. Okay, all right. Now this is where we'll start learning about steps to design a questionnaire. Now, when you talk about designing a questionnaire, you should be firstly very clear about the fact that what are your research aims and goals of the questionnaire. What kind of information, simply is what kind of information you would like to have from your questionnaire. So for instance, if I would like to, I have a research which aims to find out that what are the factors which influence the consumers, real estate consumers or customers, making their purchase for residential real estate in Melbourne. Let's talk about that. Okay, so what are the factors which actually influence people's decision when they are going to find out, or when they are going to finalize any real estate property for residential purpose. Okay, so probably it can be their visa status, it will be. So my aim, ultimate aim is that I want to understand that what is the criteria, or what goes on in their mind, or on what basis they decide to buy or not to buy the property in which they want to stay. I'm saying residential purpose, not for the commercial purpose. Okay, so I'm very specific about what kind of information I want. So my questions would be that what is their visa status, what is their income, because based on that they will be granted the loans, and what are the legal regulations of the government for the people to buy the residential property, and what is the loan cap for the income, particular income gap of the people, and all these questions. So my questions are very clear that I want the factors to be understood. So these are my questions. Okay, now from where these questions come from, I'll tell you how these questions come from. Okay, so it's very clear that mm, you should be very focused about what kind of information you want to gather, and explicitly what kind of questions will be added in that. Now, coming to one by one step. Okay, now one by one step, when I say, first is define variables. I think I told you that when we say that variables, we'll be talking about variables. Is my camera clear? Let me just fix my camera first, guys. Yeah, I think it's clear now. Yeah. So, when we talk about variables, I think it's a very known kind of term to all those who are in research, or all those who are pursuing research. Okay. First, let's understand variables. In a very easy to understand terms, I would tell you that variables are those factors which you study in your research. Simple. Variables are those factors or slash elements which you study in your research. Okay. Primarily, there are two kind of variables. Firstly, it's dependent and independent, and I think as the name itself says a lot, that dependent variables. So any kind of movement, I'm explaining to you in a very simple language. Any kind of movement in these dependent variables is caused by independent variable. Okay, so this movement is called as variation. Okay, so your dependent variables for their variation, for their movement, is dependent on independent variables. All right. Okay, now in your research, what are called as what are classified as dependent variables? Maybe you find that some other researchers has worked with similar variables but classifying them as independent one. That is okay. Okay, third kind is extraneous variables. These are those variables which comes during the course of the research on their own, and a researcher needs to control them. Okay, so coming back to dependent and independent variable, for example, like we were talking about the attitude of people. Attitude is liking or disliking of the consumer towards the ice cream. Just a second. Yeah, so towards the ice cream. Okay, so their attitude, their liking or disliking, their preferences towards the ice cream basically is dependent on the weather. So if the weather is summer, they will eat ice cream. Okay, so their consumption of ice cream is dependent on weather. So consumption of ice cream is a dependent variable and weather is an independent variable in this. Okay, however, if there are some sort of promotions going on, people irrespective of the whether they eat the ice cream, so that will be, we will take it as an extraneous, so which comes as a surprise to you as a researcher. Okay, so these extraneous variable you will find out when you are getting the responses from your respondents, so that, oh, there are also some factors which affects the consumption of the ice cream. Okay, so these are not classified as independent or dependent. They are variables which come across the course of research, and not every research will have them. Just remember all this. Okay, not every research will have extraneous variables. All right, so first is that you define the variables of your study. What are you trying to find out? Like I gave you the example of attitude, so likewise, are you identifying behavior? Are you identifying somebody's need? Are you identifying demographics like age, income, gender, and everything? Or you're trying to find out the combination of that? So basically, variables. Okay, so firstly, you should be very clear about your variables, and your variables you will find out from the literature review. Okay, that also I've told you, which have come now. So for this, now you review the current literature. Okay, wherein you will find out the different surveys collected in the past, their study aims, what they have been comparing, or what are they studying. So based on your review of literature, you get to understand the variables which you will choose to study for your research. Okay, so it'll be your very careful understanding or very careful review of your research will lead you to go ahead for your own variable finding. Okay, okay. Then comes your target respondents. Like as I told you, sample. See, you can't test everyone, right? Your population size is big enough. So if the population size is big enough, now if the population is not big enough, like for example, you wants to understand the teaching effectiveness, teaching effectiveness of a particular school, so that you're dealing with a case of a particular case of a particular school, and you want to understand the teaching effectiveness of the teachers teaching in that school. So the population is entirely of the teachers who are teaching in that school. It will be 15, 20, not more than that, 25. Okay, which is a measurable population. So you need not to go for a sample from that. So if your population is small enough, you may take entire population as your sample. However, if your population is large one, okay, so you can't test everyone, you can't approach everyone. Like for example, you want to understand the testing effectiveness or the of the primary schools operating in a city, public primary schools in a city. So in that case, your population would be high. So you'll have to choose your sample for that, and you have to make sure that your sample represents the characteristics of the entire population. Okay, so basically, when you decide your respondents, so you conduct basically two kind of designs. First is longitudinal design, wherein you want to understand a particular population, same group. Let's say, for example, let's go back to the first example. We say we want to understand the teaching effectiveness in one particular school. So we want to understand the same effectiveness of the same school teacher every year. So we will go back with the different kind of questionnaire to the same group. We are not changing the respondents. Okay, that's longitudinal, longer time with the same group. Remember like this. Okay, when you talk about that, you are presenting your questionnaire to one more different groups. I'm like the same kind of population is not being repeated. You are distributing to many people. That's called cross-sectional design. Okay, now that's up to your nature of research you want to do for longitudinal. Let's say, for example, you want to understand any kind of evolution, or you want to understand any kind of improvement, or depreciation, or any kind of disadvantage over a period of time on a particular group, then you will go for longitudinal design. Okay, otherwise you can go for cross sectional design. So that completely depends on what kind of study you have in your hand. Okay. Okay, then comes your develop questions. So now you are done with your variables are defined. You have reviewed the literature also for that, and then you know whom you're approaching, or whom you will approach to answer your questions. Okay, so like I told you in advance, do not go for a very lengthy questionnaire. I mean, it is always advisable. Do not go for a very lengthy questionnaire. Okay, and the language of the questionnaire should not be very jargon oriented or very complicated. It should not be like that. So always focus on designing smart questions. Now, smart questions, it should be, what I meant by is that they should not give any kind of sense of misunderstanding to the respondents. Okay, so very clearly stated question. Okay, very clearly stated questions. Because what happen is that if you are not discussing clearly stated questions, the respondents will also give confused answers because they are not understanding the questions clearly. It will be very difficult to analyze the answers. Okay, so it should be important on your part that you are designing the question in such a way that they are clear enough to be understood. One very important another part, for instance, you are conducting any research, let's say for to the rural part of any country or any district or any city state. So there you know that your respondents are probably not capable enough to understand very jargon oriented language. Okay, so make sure that when you design your questionnaire to any kind of respondent, I'm saying, always keep, because now because in the previous steps you knew whom you are targeting to, you know your sample. So always design the questionnaire keeping the capabilities of the respondents in mind. Like I always say in my webinars, that I'll explain you in a very simple language. I'll try to explain you in a simple language, because I think that not everybody in the audience is of the same level of learning capacity. Okay, starting from basic will definitely reach to everyone, but starting from complicated will reach to fewer ones, leaving other behind. Okay, so whenever you as a researcher also uh, are designing your questions, please make sure that you take care of the capabilities of understanding of your sample respondents. Now, the question is that, or the point of remembrance is that, all if you would like to have a understanding about what kind of language we should use in the questionnaire, whatever studies you have reviewed in the past, whatever studies you have reviewed in the past entailing the questionnaire, you may please visit them. Okay, you may please visit them. Why I'm telling you is that you will get an idea of how and what kind of language we should be designing or we should be using in our questions. Okay, so this review gives a lot of help. Okay, now next is choose your question type. Now, basically, you have to phrase the questions appropriately, like I said. So, when you talk about explorative questionnaires, where you are, you know, giving a chance to the respondents to explain. Okay, so in that case, in those open questions, and what are open questions we discussed in the starting. Okay, so in those questions you give the liberty to the respondents to explain their answers, to give the logic behind their choices. So you need to decide that which will be your question type. However, on the contrary, the quantitative questionnaires, they primarily include close ended questions, and which we have discussed already. So in which the researcher have predefined multiple choices or the rating scales. uh, you must have heard about 5 point Likert scales, so generally which is being used for social sciences questionnaires, and where the respondents have to choose out of those options. One thing I would like to tell you that if you are designing the questionnaire, let's say for example with the choice of scale, so and you have the scale like strongly disagree, disagree, agree, neutral. So let's say strongly disagree, disagree, neutral, agree, and strongly agree. Okay, this is the 5 point scale options you have for your respondents. So do not aim for the questions which do not let the respondents answer for neutral in many of the questions, because in that ways then your results would be, probably you'll have a very biased kind of results, or it'll be difficult for you to analyze appropriately. Okay, so however, nevertheless, whatever is the kind of questions for you to choose, like probably it is explorative or it is quantitative with predefined respondents choices, it depends upon the nature of your research what you're going for. Okay, then comes your question design, designing question sequence and overall layout. Like I said, that it's very important that how your question looks like. I'm not saying in terms of that you make a border out of it or you make the design of it. No, I'm not. What I'm intended to say is that the arrangement of the questions should be in such a way that it gives a logical sequence. So your question flow should be like, it should be very easily to be understood, that okay, yes, the previous question is supposed to come like this. Okay, and whether you want to have that skip rule as in that the respondents can skip the questions in which the question does not apply to them. Okay, it's not, for example, do you work in a public sector? Okay, yes, no. Have you been a part of real estate purchase? So it does not apply to them. should be an option, so they can skip the question and come to the next one. Okay, so how this transition from one question to another would be falling for you, you will have to arrange it in a proper layout, and that also you can understand when you will have a look on the previous review of literature, where you will see how the previous authors have given the design to their questionnaires. Okay, so that time just be careful enough, firstly to understand right kind of variables, and then what kind of language they have used in their questionnaire, and thirdly what is the overall layout of their questionnaire. Okay, so that will give you a lot of idea. Then you run a pilot study. So basically, now pilot study, firstly understand, is a test run kind of, if in in an easy language, if I make you understand, it's a kind of test run. So why do we do it? So we do it because just to make sure, I'm sorry, just to make sure that the questionnaire which we have in hand, will it give the right kind of information what we are intended to find out from the respondents or not. So what you do is you do a pilot study. Okay, so in pilot study you choose the representative sample from your target audience, and before giving it to all, you give it the questionnaire to them, and to understand the flaws, if there is any in the questionnaire, and what kind of experience these pilot participants have. Are you getting any feedback from them that they can work you can work on these questions, or you can improve the question layout, or you can improve the question structure? Because once they go through the question, they will give you their feedback, there were kind of difficulties, if there were any, did they face in filling out the questionnaire. So this will help you to improve the questionnaire beforehand, then submitting it to a larger audience. Okay, because if you get feedback from a larger audience and you do not get the right kind of data, it's an absolute time waste, and it takes you back in the time. Okay, all right. Then, so now there are basically three kind of questionnaires when you say structured questionnaires, unstructured questionnaire, and quasi structured questionnaire. So when you say structured questionnaires, which is, again, you have the close ended questions in them. Okay, they are structured questionnaire. Now unstructured questionnaires, which has the open ended questions in them. Okay, we understood what are close ended questions and what are open ended questions. So structured have always have close ended questions in them, unstructured has open ended questions in that. Now when you talk about quasi structured questionnaire, in quasi structured questionnaires you have the combination of both these questions. Okay, so you'll have the close ended questions as well and open ended questions as well. Okay, now since we have understood what is questionnaire and how do we design it, let's talk about data collection, which I have already introduced you about while I was talking about the data and information about. So basically, any kind of research, any kind of researcher who would like to pursue their research, they start with data. Okay, that information. Okay, what kind of research you have decides how you will collect the data. Okay, and if you have any hypothesis basically are those assumptions which may be stated true or which may not be. They get tested on the basis of the data the researcher collects. Okay, so basically it is that method with which you, as a researcher, to collect the right kind of information to be further analyzed so as to complete the research. Okay, now data collection basically is different in different researchers. Like, are you going for a qualitative one, or you're going for a quantitative one, or a mixed one? So that the nature of your research design basically will decide that how you will collect the information. Let me use the word information. Okay, so your nature of that research, like what I tell says that the nature of your research will decide that how you will collect the information, that date. This is called data collection. Okay, now like I said, that based on your research, or based on your nature of your research, you will choose to collect data. Okay, so if you have your research qualitatively done, so you will collect data through qualitative methods like interviews. So interview is basically set of questions with which you extract information from the respondents, wherein you give a chance to the respondents to give an explanatory answers, detailed answers. Okay, then you come survey. Survey is also a representative form of questionnaires. So generally students ask what is the difference between survey and questionnaire. So basically it's just the difference that it's basically very thin line difference. But survey is a representative form of the questionnaire, in which also you design the questions intended to extract the information from the respondents. Then come group discussion. Now in group discussion, what happens is that you tend to have your respondents in groups, and based on their discussion, you make note of what they are discussing about. Rather than going individually, you make them in groups, and based on their discussion, you make note of the information being discussed amongst them. Then come observation. Now observation basically is a method where you are observing your respondents, and this observation is done generally to understand the behavior. When you have the variables in behavior category, then observation is the method which is generally used. Okay, so what do you do in observation? That you observe your respondents. Also, if it's a participative observation, you become a part of the observation, you become a part of your respondents. But however, an unbiased observation is made. I mean, the natural behavior comes when the researcher is not the participant of the observer. Like for instance, I want to observe a group of students, how do they behave in the absence of teacher. Do they learn? Do they study on their own, or they don't whatsoever? I will observe them from a distance. They don't know that I'm observing them. That's called observation. However, let's say I am not their class teacher, but I go with the intention that what they do in the absence of their class teacher, they know that I am here. Probably, they know that I'm there to observe. However, I'm not their direct class teacher. So their behavior definitely would be slightly changed, but not as in the presence of their class teacher. So participant observation is where the researcher becomes the part of the respondents. On the other hand, when you talk about quantitative data collection tool, there are some like face to face, we talk about them. You give the questionnaires online, you phone them, you email them. Interviews also you can conduct in quantitative. Okay, so like I said, that based on your nature of research, you collect the data. Okay, so what is exactly a difference between quantitative and qualitative? Firstly and foremostly, quantitative is numerical data, which is easily measurable, which is countable. Okay. Now, when it comes to qualitative data, it is more descriptive in nature. It is more language oriented. It is more described. I hope the clear difference is very okay to all of you. Then, like I said, it is measurable. It is clearly related to countable numbers. So how many, how often, how much, this kind of information you get. When it comes to qualitative wisdom, that why behind the questions comes, why and how this certain behavior happened. So the questions which requires explanation is qualitative data extraction questions. Okay, all right. So basically, when you talk about analysis of this data, it is used by statistical analysis, both the data kind of. However, when you talk about qualitative data, there you identify the repeated themes. Okay, like for example, I'm conducting a detailed interviews for my qualitative study, so I will see that how many participants are giving me repetitive information, or probably giving me information cornered around the same theme. They're talking the same thing. Okay, so that kind of analysis happen. All right. Okay, now let's talk about research data. How many research data we have? So basically, um, we generally group it into four main types: observational, experimental, simulation, and derived. So observation is basically, like I told you, and the name itself suggests, you observe the behavior or activity, or generally you asked open-ended questions. Okay, and you get the observational data with that. Now when it comes to experimental data is basically is collected with a purpose, that what happens before and after an intervention. Like, for example, a new teaching pedagogy is introduced in the school. Okay, so students were discussed before that intervention, and students were also being discussed after that intervention. What is the difference in both the scenarios? So you will be able to find out the relationship with that information and effectiveness of learning of the students. That's experimental data. Now, simulation data is basically when you get the real world process, or probably you use the system and you get from the computer test methods, like weather conditions, or your economic conditions or models, that you get the simulation data. The information you get from that is simulation data. Okay. Then comes your structured approach for data collection. Okay. See, basically, whatever kind of data you're talking about, they're all being gathered or they're all being collected in a similar way. Okay. It's just very important to understand if you are using interventions. Like I said, if there is new teaching intervention introduced in the class, what is the before and after of that? So, your approach for data collection should be planned in such a way that how will I collect the information before that information and after that information. Your interview questions should be arranged appropriately. Okay, and the questions which are structured, like close ended, they are not be confusing, disguised as in they are not giving any kind of incomplete or false information to the respondents. Okay, and there is nothing hidden in the questions for the respondents which they should know. Okay, so there has to be some approach when you're talking about data collection through the any kind of data collection tool you're going ahead with. So, and always remember that randomly do not go for data collections. Just plan your data collection. That data collection is a very integral and important activity in your research journey, because based on that, your entire results, your entire findings of your research are based upon. Okay. Now, when you talk about unstructured data collection, basically, where you are completely as a researcher, is decisive factor that what you want to ask from your researcher. Okay, if you do not have any pre-decided structural technique, if you do not have any pre-decided appropriately organized arrangement, then you go for unstructured approach. And generally, when you're looking for any exploratory kind of research, you are trying to explore the possibilities around a problem, you're trying to define the problem, then you go for the unstructured approach for data collection. Okay. Okay, so as we discussed about the ways of data collection, survey, okay, which we have already, I told you that is wherein you ask the set of questions also from the groups. Interviews also, I told you that when you have a set of questions, and normally, they are identified as per the respondents you are going to interview with. However, structured and semi-structured interviews, with structured interviews means you have a pre-decided set of questions for all the respondents, same questions to all the respondents. Semi-structured interview means where you have couple of questions same for all, however remaining you define or decide as per the answers of the respondents. Okay, when you think that the same questions would not be applicable to all, their answers would be differed from each other, and you want to have a very wider information from the respondents, in that case you will go ahead with semi-structured interviews, wherein certain questions will be same for all and certain will be decided as per the answers of the respondents. Okay. Focus group is another way of data collection, and it's very interesting also. I'll tell you what is it exactly. So basically, what you have is that you take a group of people, only one group of people, or probably if you're conducting data collection with several focus groups, so you can have several focus groups as well. Now, what do you have in that? There is a group of people, and you give them the, I'm so sorry, and you give them the issue to be discussed or the matter to be discussed. You float in them like we discussed in groups, right? So they all will have different opinion, they will all have different discussion on that. You note that discussion, you note that the what they are talking about, right? So that is called focus group, wherein you have the focus of your data collection on a group. So how they are behaving, what are their opinions, what are the different circumstances, that you identify with the discussion happening in the focus group, and you make a note of this discussion which is happening amongst them. Okay. All right, we'll skip the break time and we'll go ahead with the discussion as we have limited time with us. Now, I know what is data. I know what a question is. I know what are different kind of data. I know how to collect the data through the questionnaire. Now, data is with me. Okay. Information is with me. I need to make meaning out of it. I need to first understand, okay, and make my audience understand. So, the information which I have got, that is data, the data which I have got from the respondents, I will analyze it, that what does it mean. I will give a logical reasoning to that. For example, based on the 150 people to whom I distributed my survey to, 80 people say that we prefer to go on vacation in any season of the year. Couple of them says in summer vacations only. Couple of them this says in winter vacations only. So what does this number means? How do I make a logical finding out of these this data collected, right? So this is what is called as analysis. Whatever information I have got it, how I will analyze it. Okay. Now, for example, like for instance, I have gone for quantitative data. So basically, I have gone for close-ended questions, and I got, either I can get a discrete data, whole numbers, the complete numbers I have got, the continuous data, so wherein I get the categories or preferences, so I prefer this over this, so there is no specific sequence given. No, somebody is saying this, I prefer this over this, somebody is saying I prefer this, somebody is from this category. So that is called continuous data. Then we'll call as ordinal data, which has the data which can be arranged in a sequence, or probably in a range in an order. Like for example, people from age between 25 to 30, they prefer to go for summer vacation, or so any vacation in any kind of, in any season. People from 35 to 40, they go for summer vacation, and so and so. So you can arrange actually in ordinal data. When you talk about qualitative data, basically they are not numerically organized. Okay, they are more based on your perceptions, your behavior, your experiences, which you collect through open-ended questions. This much we all have understood by far now. Okay, all right. Coming further, now very important, this particular thing, you, when you analyze the data, okay, you have some hypothesis. Okay, you have some hypothesis. Not every, now make a note of it, not every research need to have hypothesis, first and foremost thing. Okay, now if you do not want to have hypothesis for your study, it's okay, but if you have it, then you have to test it through data analysis. Hypotheses are primarily assumptions which you test with your research, which I already told you. Now, in order to reject and accept the hypothesis, hypotheses again are of two types: alternative, and null. Null hypothesis is the no relationship version of alternative hypothesis. Okay, hypotheses are what? Hypotheses are the assumptions depicting the relationship between two or more variables. Remember variables we chose? Okay, so with the help of hypothesis, you assume to depict any relationship between the chosen variables. Okay, in the alternate hypothesis, that there is a positive association, or there is an association. Now, when you talk about the null hypothesis of the same alternative hypothesis, there is no relationship. Okay. So for every alternative hypothesis, there is a null hypothesis, and need not to write this null hypothesis all the time. So this acceptance or rejecting of null hypothesis or alternative hypothesis means, if you are accepting hypothesis or alternative hypothesis, so we will test it, okay, and you will write that thereby we accept the alternative hypothesis. If your research says that you accept the null hypothesis, you will say that we accept the null hypothesis, thereby rejecting the alternative hypothesis. So stating rejecting the alternative hypothesis always has to be written when you are writing, when you're accepting the null hypothesis. Okay. Okay, now coming to this, when you are talking about quantitative data and its analysis, so your research questions and your data, what is the data type, it tells you that which statistical method to be used. Okay, I'll give you some examples. N, capital N depicts population size, small n depicts sample size, and p value, that is statistical significance. Okay, if it is less than 0.05, which you will get on the basis of your analysis, this is basically whatever you are attempted to find, whatever you are attempted to find, whatever was your alternative hypothesis was, it is accepted. Okay, it is accepted if the p value is less than 0.05, and this p value you get on the statistical analysis which you do on the basis of, and the method you would choose on the basis of the research questions and the data types. Okay, whatever is your data type is. Then comes, now we'll talk about qualitative and quantitative data analysis separately. When you talk about qualitative data analysis, like I told you, that this type of data which you will get is detailed one. Okay, it is exploratory one. So it's very important to organize the data. Let's say, for example, you interviewed your respondents. You had 10 respondents, you interviewed on them, and you noted down their answers on the questions which you had. So you have all, understand what you do, you have all the answers from each one of your respondents. Okay, now based on what they have answered to you, you transcribe their interviews. That means whatever their interviews meant, because they will not give you answers in research oriented terminologies using different variables for your study. No, they will answer in the commonly used language by them and meaning as well. So you will have to transcribe their interviews and arrange them accordingly. That respondent one about this answer, about this question answered this, respondent 2 about this question answered, and then so and so. All right, now having said that, means your every question is basically aiming to find out the information about a particular fact or particular variables in the study. So how they have given answers related to the variable or related to the information which you're intended to ask, you will arrange it accordingly, because you will transcribe what they meant. Because let's say, for example, uh, we don't go to any kind of vacation because of this financial constraints. So it's very difficult for us to go to go to vacations, because we have a lot of financial responsibility on us. This is one respondent answered you. So how will you transcribe that? Financial restriction is one of the factor restricting people to not let them go for vacations. Okay, so this way, let's say you interview 10 people, and 3 out of 10 have given the same reasoning, that is financial restriction for not going on vacation. This is a repeated data which you have found out from their responses. So this is one thing which is coming out. Couple of them says that we always go to hill stations. Couple of them, they always say that we always explore new places. So based on their answers, based on what they have given the responses at, you tend to identify the patterns, repeated themes, and then you arrange it and then you code it. Like for code it, for example, financial responsibilities, you code them 1. Okay, going to hill station, you code it 2. Exploring different places, you coded 3. So these themes and these patterns are coded then accordingly. All right, okay, all right. So here is a depiction which I have presented for you, that qualitative data preparation and analysis. So first is, like we discussed, that you get familiar with the data. What are your basic observations, what the information which you have taken down from. Then always make sure that you get in touch with your research objectives and questions. You develop a framework, that is your broad ideas what you have, which will help you to structure and label the data. And then you identify the patterns. What are the repeated patterns? So this is the way you do. Now, qualitative analysis can be done by content analysis, thematic analysis, textual analysis, and discourse analysis. Okay, and there's one more, which you, content analysis is also, you call it, there is one more analysis which called as narrative analysis. However, coming to content analysis, which is basically you are talking about common words, phrases, categories which you have got. Okay, thematic analysis is where you find out the patterns, similar themes. So financial restriction, somebody said, lot of EMIs. Somebody says family responsibility. So theme basically is the financial responsibility. So you identify the common theme. Textual analysis is basically when you are examining the structure or probably design of the context. This is basically, to mainly to understand the evolution or changes over the period of time. Discourse analysis is particularly used uh, in the to particularly used when they you find out as a researcher that there is a visible difference in the change in the language. Okay. Narrative analysis is basically one very commonly used analysis in qualitative data analysis, which my students are also use that. When you narrate the responses of the respondents, definitely highlighting the repeated and common themes. So narrative analysis is that narration of the responses. Okay. Okay. So, like I have discussed the coding with you. So, coding is basically when you identify the common themes and pattern and you label them. Label them as in when you give them the codes. Okay. So, first common themes identified, then giving them the codes or categories. Okay. First you identify, then you organize, then you give them the codes. Okay. Okay, now we'll talk about the quantitative data analysis. Quantitative data analysis can be done by various ways. First is SWOT analysis, when you do the strength, weakness, opportunities, and threat analysis for an organization, particularly when the research is done keeping the particular organization in eye. Conjoint analysis is basically to understand a particular market, how the people in that particular market is making their purchase. Okay, what kind of availability is there in terms of product and the services. So when you want to understand the maths or the trend analysis in a particular market, you may use to go for conjoint analysis. Okay, then cross tabulation is one of the preliminary statistical method, basically, which is used to establish relationship and trends between various parameters means various variables which you are taken. So then you use cross tabulation, what kind of relationship, what kind of trends are being seen within different variables. Cross tabulation is used. Turf, which can be expanded as totally unduplicated reach and frequency analysis, basically where is used in a situation where the favorable communication source is to be analyzed. So it is generally used for the market research methods. Okay. All right. Now just understand quantitative data analysis method in a nutshell. In a nutshell, when you are talking about the descriptive analysis of quantitative data, just understand, okay, when you are talking about descriptive analysis for a quantitative data, so there it is, this is the first level of analysis. Basically here what you are doing is you are just summarizing the variables and if there is any pattern in that. So descriptive analysis, if anybody will say that what is and how did you do the descriptive analysis, that means they are hinting towards the mean, which is the average, the median, which is the, let's say for example you have the data, quantitative data, for example you have the quantitative data which is expressed in numbers. Okay, and you're talking about the descriptive analysis of that quantitative data which is expressed in numbers. So you will talk about the mean of that data. That means you are talking about the average, median is midpoint, mode is most commonly repeated value. For example, you have the data for the students age in a particular class. So it is like 8 9 10 8 9 10 8 9 10. So most common age is 9. Your mode is 9. Percentage frequency, that If 9 is occurring, how many times 9 is occurring? 8 is occurring, how many times 8 is occurring? Range is highest and lowest value. So highest is 10, lowest is 8. So these are called as descriptive analysis. Okay, so descriptive analysis, this is called as. Now when you talk about inferential analysis, you are inferring. So descriptive analysis, when you are describing the data, what kind of data it is, like what is the average, what is the mode. When you are inferring the information from the data, that is called as inferential analysis. Inferential analysis basically shows the relationship between variables. Okay, shows the relationship between, for example, you want to describe the relationship between two variables, you will use correlation. Simple. You want to show that what is the relation. Correlation will tell you whether there is a relationship between two variables or not. Simple. Correlation will tell you this much. Regression will tell you that what is the level of that relation. Okay, in that case, if you want to find out the extent of variation or relationship between two variables, you will use regression. Now if you will would like to find out that how two groups, let's say you're studying two groups, two or more groups in your research, so how these two groups differ from each other, then you will choose ANOVA, which is expanded as analysis of variance. If you have one group only, then there is no point to use ANOVA. If you just want to understand correlation, just want to understand whether there is a relationship or not, simple, correlation. You want to understand the extent of relationship, regression. So many times questions comes to me that what kind of test we need to use. So your tests are basically identified on the basis of your objectives. Your research can only also be till descriptive analysis. That's it. You can only do the descriptive analysis with quantitative data also. However, when you're talking about inferential analysis, so your choice of the test would be on the basis of the research objectives of your study. Okay. Now, data collection is done, data is done, data analysis is done. Now, how you will actually present that data? Now, data analysis we have done on the softwares, and we have done it all. How you will present that data so that normal people can understand? Okay, so it is basically data presentation is done with the help of data visualization tools. Okay, now what do you call as data visualization tool? Data visualization tools are like graphs, your charts, pie charts, bar charts, with which you represent the data. It basically gives the content analysis. You're analyzing the data and you are basically giving a pictorial version to the data which you have analyzed. That is called data presentation. So let's say, for example, with a pie chart, that circular diagram, you have different percentages in different colors. So it is very easy for your reader to identify with the help of those pie charts, pies, that which percentage belongs to which category. Okay, that's what is called as data presentation. Now, how do we do that? So, firstly, your objectives needs to be there. What kind of data you need to collect it, how you want to collect it. Primary data is, I hope all of you know that, primary data is which you collect. Secondary data is which is presented in the form of literature for us. Okay, then whatever data you have collected and analyzed, you need to format it in the form of table or maps or graphs, whatever you want to have as per the nature of your research. Then let's say you have a pie chart like I discussed. So on the basis of that pie chart, the certain percentages which you showcased, then you will extract the information out of it. What does that percentage means? What does that trends means? So you will discuss the information on the basis of that depiction which you have done. Okay. Now, if you give the bar graphs, increasing trend or decreasing trend, it is clearly visible that it is increasing or decreasing. You will extract that information and give it to the audience. Okay. Now, there are a couple of softwares for the data analysis, like GraphPad software, which is privately held California corporation. They publish with GraphPad Prism. Basically, they combines the scientific graphing, biostatistics. It is mainly for the, the ones which have clinical backgrounds. Most commonly uses SPSS, most commonly used, and it you have all the kind of test in it based on your objectives. You can choose, like I told you, correlation, regression, ANOVA, T square, T test, chi2 test. So where you will have to fill in the data, okay, in the SPSS software in the variable form, data form, and you have to run the test. Running SPSS is like playing with, like, you operate your Instagram or you operate your Facebook. You need to choose your statistical test given in that, and whatever kind of information you want to extract, skewness of the data, kurtosis, you want to identify anything, you just need have to make a click of that. So as many interpretation you want as many analysis you want to have from SPSS, it'll give you the option and you need to click in and then the data in front of you. Most important thing here is to understand that how you fill in your variable information in the software. Whatever information you fill in, it will operate on that data only. Okay. Okay, so this is basically a pictorial. This is the way you fill in the data, and here you get the results. Okay. All right. There is another software that is called Excel Stat, which is a very powerful Excel data analysis that allows you to do the analysis on Microsoft Excel. However, it is not very commonly used. And there is one more software called NVivo, which is used primarily for the qualitative analysis, okay, which helps you with the coding and all. Now, coming to data interpretation. Now, since we have analyzed the data, we know what the softwares are. We need to very sure about the kind of test we need to run. Like I told you very simply, yeah, it need not to confuse between whether we go for chi-square or whether we know for correlation or ANOVA. You just need to understand, be clearly reflect. It is need to be clearly reflecting with your objectives. Okay. Data interpretation in a very simple, easy language means, what does the information you have analyzed means? Okay. That means you wanted to identify the relationship between two variables, whether there is a relationship or not. If there is a relationship, it means what? If there is no relationship, it means what? So interpreting the data means, what does the data mean for a common person to be reading it? What is the meaning of the information which is discussed in the research? Okay, that's what called as data interpretation. Okay, same way, you have to go with the data interpretation, which further tells you to make your conclusion and recommendations. All right, then comes your conclusion. Now, conclusion is, I would give one piece of advice to all the researchers. By the time you write your conclusion, after you're finding an analysis, you're too bugged up of your work. However, conclusion should be carefully made. In a nutshell, it is an cumulative answers of all the research questions which you had in your research and with which you started with. Okay, so based on your information, what you have right from the start till the end, the summary of entire of it, it's conclusion, data conclusion. Okay, what exactly does your data means all in all? Okay, Now that's was from my side, and now we are open for the questions. And I think we have basically Met3 when you talk about how to do Likert scale. So Likert scale analysis is done on the generally it is done on the 5 point scale. Okay, so you generally what you do is for each questionnaire, what you do is you calculate the total number of responses, whether they are on the neutral category or the strongly agree or agree. Then you add the total and the divide by the total number of respondents. Each response is total number of respondents. Okay, this is how to do. So it is basically a 5 point scale. In Likert scale analysis, generally we go for 5 point scale. Yes, Pratik, your PPTs and recordings will be given to you. Thank you. Thank you. Jeza, how can we calculate sample size for cross section studies? So basically, when you talk about cross section studies, it depends upon your population size, and there are a couple of methods for calculating the sample size calculations also. However, generally, what we say that it is the 10% of your what do you call as population, 10% of the size of a population. However, or 5 to 10%, because 95% of the confidence we take, and it is depending upon various methods there are there, you may take, if your population size is large, you may take the 10% simple one. There are Fisher's formula also, solvent formula also for the sample size calculation. So there are a couple of it. You may choose any. So firstly, you should have your population size, your margin of error should be there, which is generally 95%, and then your confidence level. Margin of error is 5%, confidence level is 95%. Then you finalize your sample size. So, and if you want to go for any particular methods, there are many, couple of them. Okay, okay, okay. Detailed data analysis we discussed. We are done with it, Maitri. Could we make lectures about SPSS? Surely. How to take sample if my respondent is IT sector? So irrespective of your respondent are of any sector, Chetna, you may go ahead with choosing your sample based on what the population you have. Does SPSS perform well with qualitative analysis? You may go with qualitative, you may go with NVA also for qualitative. Yeah. Anjana, ma'am, could you have separate session for sure? Surely, surely. Can you explain how to drive codes in thematic and how to do? See, basically, Shiroz, when you talk about thematic analysis, so based on the responses what we have from our respondents, we need to identify first of all, like I told you, that how many people go into the vacation on their in throughout the year, and what are the reasons they give of not going or probably going or where they are going. So based on their responses, you need to identify that what is the common theme coming out on their responses, and then to the each common theme you give the separate codes. Okay, okay, the next question is from Desire. May I have your name please? If that's the name, then no problem. Okay, Desire, the question is you want to know about the Maxga software for the data analysis. Okay, so basically when you talk about Maxca software, it is a program. What I understand, probably my understanding about the software would be limited. It is a program, it is a single user program, and it is generally used for your qualitative analysis. Okay, it gives you the ability to code like NVivo, but I always prefer NVivo over this. That's why I'm said that my understanding, my knowledge about my this particular software would be limited. And it helps you to identify patterns, it helps you to do code. However, it is being a single user software, that's why NVivo is preferred by me. And it also helps you to go for data analysis when it comes to qualitative data analysis. Somebody was asking me about qualitative data analysis tools, so Maxtra is also one of the tools for to qualitative data analysis along with NVivo. Clinical research basically, Mallikarjun, which is done with the scientific background, which is done with the clinical purposes. I'm trained and do my survey on my trainees. They are now eight in the course. I got good input from them. The next course will be after 1 month. Then I use only trainees' input for my thesis. Yes, Mr. Yusuf, if your study is see for a quantitative study, for a quantitative research, the sample size, or if you have the entire population of eight, would be low. If your research, if you're a trainer like you said, and if your research is of qualitative nature, then it is a good number to go ahead with. Yeah. Any other questions anybody is having? Please feel free for the questions, guys. Okay. Yes, can see. Mr. Yusuf, AI definitely can help. However, please be aware of the AI plagiarism, and I hope you is like you said, you are a trainer at him yourself, so you must be aware about the wise use of AI. That's it. I mean, that's what I would say, that because in future, if you'd like to get your research published somewhere, so it should not reflect any kind of plagiarism obtained from AI. So just go for a wise use for AI. Bhupen, was that an easy software which can be used for 3D drawing sketching? Bhupen, this information probably I would not be able to tell you. Good afternoon, ma'am. When we do fieldwork, we use household census for qualitative data. Would you please highlight on this? Yes, basically, when we do fieldwork, we use household census because then in that case, population size is large. Okay, in that case, our population size is large. In that, then we use the already recorded census, which is done by government. So we use that information and the responses made in that census, or if we want to choose our samples, we use from that census, considering the information in that census as our population. Shyam, if I should check in chess code for thesis writing. Sham, if I got your answers right, question right, that yes, you may get in touch with research graduate for same. Thank you, Dr. Prem. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yes, Shiros, you may go for like max tax, like Ms. Desire said, and you go for NVivo also for the same. Samsung, is pilot study important when using a questionnaire that is used before? Pilot study is desirable. Important would be a restrictive word. I would say that desirable. Okay. Now, when I say the pilot study is desirable, that means you can also go with an expert analysis for your questionnaire also. If you don't want to go for a pilot study, then you go ahead with that as well. Okay. Good afternoon, ma'am. Can you tell me about software for data analysis, X0 and OVA? Software data analysis. See, Excel stats, when you say that peer, it is basically the Microsoft Excel analysis. And this analysis is done with the Excel. And when you talk about ANOVA, so basically, ANOVA is used to understand the variance in two or more different groups. So, if your study involves two or more different groups, then you go for the ANOVA. Okay, so there are a couple of questions more. What are the statistical measures which, from the underlying principle for research data collection and outlier identifications? Basically, the nature of your data and the nature of your research design makes the underlying principle for your research data collection. Okay, what kind of research, what kind of nature of your research is, it preliminary have identified, or it helps with your identification of your right kind of data collection tool, and the further identification of the right kind of statistical analysis. Which sampling method is best for data collection for machine learning field for research? See, this question uh, can be best answered only when you have research objectives. Fine. If I say that, go for non-random sampling. If I say that, go for random sampling. I do not know the nature of your study. I do not know what kind of research objectives you have in score. So finding the sampling method is primarily based on, let's say, if you have a large population size, so you always go for, or you preferably go for random sampling. Okay, if you have a small sample size and you're particularly trying to obtain data from a particular organization, so you go for convenience sampling also. So it depends upon what kind of nature of the research you have. What is the structural equation modeling? See, when you talk about role of SEM plays a very important role in questionnaire design. Okay, when you talk about the role, it helps you to appropriate structuring of the question. It, like what we say, that layout of the question. Okay, so the major role of SEM is to find out the layout, to deciding the flow of questions for each, and to ensure that right kind of questions are there in the questionnaire. Okay, thank you so much. How can artificial intelligence and machine learning model algorithm help in process data collection and sampling? I think this question is particularly from a student of researcher of a machine learning. How can AI and machine learning models help in the process of data collection and sampling? See, data collection and sampling gets faster. Your sampling, the choice of sample size, the choice of respondents gets faster with AI or any kind of machine learning tools. What is the software most suitable for random selection data sampling? Can it be done in Excel? Yes, it can be. It can be done. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. How collected data related to agricultural data? Sano, probably I am not able to understand your question. SPSS, Amal. SPSS, go for SPSS. Yeah. Felix, I would say that I would not say that it is not appropriate to use Excel. You can go for it. However, at master's level, it is absolutely okay to go with an Excel analysis for qualitative. Yeah. Like, how should I start with IT sector respond? Where can I get the authenticated sources? Can you help me with example related to it? See, there is no authenticated sources to give you respondents, basically, right? First of all, you have to identify that from where you want to collect, from whom you want to collect the data. Like you said, IT sector. So IT sector is very wide. Are you focusing on any city, or are you focusing on any kind of profession in IT sector that you want to, you have to narrow down. I think I told you, Pero, when you talk about the purpose of questionnaire, you have said valid by, and can you please repeat? See, validity basically that for whatever you are designing your question for, whatever information you want to have from the questions, the questionnaire should be able to give you that information. Okay, and biasness is that me as a researcher, I have certain preconceived notion in my mind, and that I want desirable answers. That biasness should not come into my questions. Okay, I told you, Sheros, en vivo is something which I preferably use a lot, and MaxTac also, which Desire also discuss. However, en vivo you can go for it very easily, and if you like, somebody said that for Dizos also is there. So there are many, and also if you want to compare some kind of summary obtained from your qualitative, then you can use SPSS also. Agricultural data, Sano, for PhD. I mean, again, see, these kind of questions are quite wide. Like I told you always, what kind of agriculture information you would like to have? Like, what kind of agricultural you would like to have? That will decide what kind of data you would like to adopt. Can you please explain about the descriptive analysis? Descriptive analysis, where you are talking about the mean, median, mode, percentage, range of the data, which is in number form, numeric form. That called descriptive analysis, describing the data which you have, that what is the most common number coming out, what is the average of this data, what is the percentage of the data. That's called descriptive analysis. Okay. Civil engineering, public and civil. Naveen, this is, I mean, I would not be having enough knowledge about publishing civil engineering paper. Sorry. Thank you, Namrata. How do we validate a study questionnaire? And Cronbach alpha coefficient, basically, firstly, you, if you want to, validating a questionnaire, so validating a questionnaire can also be done by a expert. Okay, validating a questionnaire needs to, like I told you, that it is important to have sure that your questionnaire depicts the right kind of questionnaire. Okay, so how do you do is basically is to establish the validity of the question, the rightness of the question. You can also, you can get it done with the pilot test, if you want to get it done with the pilot test, or you can also show it to an expert which can give you the validity of the data. So pilot test is the most common way of doing the validity of the questionnaire. Now, basically, Cronbach alpha, coming to that, basically, it tells you, it is the way of assessing, it is the way of assessing that how closely a particular item, or in a group, a set of items or a group are related to each other. Okay, how they are related to each other. So basically, if the Cronbach alpha, or I should say that Cronbach alpha should not be higher than zero point 0.9. Okay, then that means your question, if it is higher than zero point 0.9, that means your questions in the questionnaire are very much similar to each other. Okay, so keep a check on your Cronbach alpha value because it tells you the similarity. If it's too higher than zero point 0.9, that means the question in the questionnaires are similar to each other. Okay. I wish to understand if to check and chase follow-up code thesis writing is an effective. Uh, if to check and follow-up code for thesis writing is an effective strategy. Yes. Again, I would say that what kind of research objectives and aim you have, Sham, depends upon that. Okay. If I have any other questions behind. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm just going back if there is any question. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. And it was always wonderful to interact with a lovely audience, an interactive one. Thank you so much. See, everyone who is, Dr. Deepak, yes, like you said, it's a very basic one because with the audience we have, it's a mix of different capability levels, right? So when we say that more advanced level of data analysis, it will be very focused and it will be very specific, and it will not be understood by the people who don't even understand variable. I'd say that whose research capability too is very limited to even understand the variables. So we need to take down to everybody's level when you teach or when you make some instance. I'm giving suggestions related to PhD synopsis for introduction. Like what kind of suggestions you want, Dipti? See, Noorjan, like for example, I want to understand, like for example, my qualitative study is on understanding the role of cybersecurity or implementing cybersecurity in a university curriculum of a particular country. So, like cybersecurity, like a lot of data is being used, a lot of technology are being used. So, I want to make sure that in order to have a proper cybersecurity in a country, that it should be introduced in a country as a curriculum. Okay, this is what I have to understand. So now I want to understand that whether all the teachers of the higher education, what do they think about it, or how do they understand cybersecurity is. So I interview them on this, that whether they agree on adding cybersecurity as a curriculum or not, or to what level, what are their opinions. So this is what I'm understanding, their opinion on including cybersecurity in any curriculum. Ma'am, we had multiple choice. Yes, you can, Seema. Desire, let the webinar end. Soon after the webinar, you will get the certificates. When you talk about introduction part of the PhD synopsis, Deepthi, you mainly talk about the topic itself, okay? And if you have any key concepts in consideration in your PhD title, I'm just talking about in PhD synopsis and type, you define that, and overall what your study will be aiming to, okay? All right. Divya, in this case, you may please visit the Scopus website, and they have a list of all the journals which are indexed with them to different domains, to whatsoever you guys would like to have it. Okay. So they have every year, they have the list updated with them. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for a very interactive audience, and I hope it went well, and we'll try to add on more interactive topics in future as well. Okay, Samson, I told you, when you want to establish any relationship, when you want to identify that is there any kind of relationship between the variables you have choose, then you use correlation. Okay, now the question comes when to use the regression. Now regression basically is used to understand the level of that relationship. Okay, then you use the regression. When you talk about t-test basically is used when you have, firstly, when you have a normal distribution. Okay, and basically it is used for single group. So whether whatever group you have choose is differing from an unknown value. So if you have a single group in consideration, then you go for t-test. Okay, comparison within the group, you don't use t-test. Okay, thank you so much, everyone. Yes, we can leave from the sessions. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.